Begin by sitting with the breath, gently returning to the still point within you, the calm center that watches without judgment and listens without reacting, because true change is never forced from the outside. It arises when we soften enough to witness the patterns we live inside, the habits of mind and heart that repeat without our awareness. And Zen invites us to notice, not fix, to become curious rather than critical, because before we can release old patterns, we must see them clearly. And the first sign that we might still be clinging to what no longer serves us is resistance, subtle, quiet, or loud and reactive. The mind's recoil against discomfort or unfamiliarity. The body's tension when something asks us to shift. Resistance, it is the protective armor of the ego, built to preserve its sense of identity, of control, of predictability. And yet, it is precisely that predictability that keeps us circling the same emotional paths, repeating the same relational dances, falling into the same thought grooves we thought we outgrew. When you feel tightness, defensiveness, irritation, or even numbness in the face of change, pause and breathe, because these are not signs that something is wrong, but invitations to pay attention, to go deeper, to ask gently, what am I protecting here? What belief? What identity? What fear? In Zen, we do not rush to change ourselves. We first learn to sit with ourselves, to befriend the inner voices rather than shame them away. Because what we resist holds the wisdom of what we fear. And in that fear, if we lean in with compassion, we find our true edges, the growing points where the old identity dissolves and the new has not yet formed. The second sign that you may be clinging to old patterns is repetition. Living on loop, finding yourself in the same arguments, the same emotional fallout, the same inner conflict. Even when the scenery changes, the actors change, the jobs or cities or partners change, but the feeling, the lesson, the challenge, it returns, not as punishment, but as practice. Zen sees this not as failure, but as echo, the soul's way of saying, you are not done here, not until you meet this with presence rather than pattern, with awareness instead of autopilot. And if we can bring kindness to that noticing, we shift from shame to awakening. Patterns are not personal failings. They are inherited, rehearsed, built into us by history and habit, by protection and pain. And as we sit in stillness, we begin to see these patterns as the mind's way of grasping at safety, at control, at love. And when we stop judging them, we begin the real work, not of changing who we are, but of remembering who we are beneath the habit. So, breathe again, and let yourself soften into the knowing that awareness itself is the first transformation. And every time you pause, every time you notice instead of react, you are loosening the grip of old patterning and allowing something wiser to move through you. Zen practice is not about forcing change. It is about clearing space for change to arise, organically, like a flower opening when conditions are right. So, trust the pauses, trust the resistance, trust the repetition, not as signs of stuckness, but as thresholds. Thresholds into deeper presence, deeper surrender, deeper wholeness. And if you can sit with what arises without needing to name it, fix it, or flee it, you'll notice that what you thought was you, your anger, your fear, your reaction, was just a wave, just a ripple on the surface. And the deeper self, the quiet self beneath it all, remains untouched, observing, spacious, and free. And so we breathe here for a while, letting these truths settle like silt to the bottom of a clear pool, letting our minds become less entangled in the noise of reaction and more attuned to the quiet wisdom of just being. Because Zen is not about becoming something new. It is about waking up to what has always been here beneath the noise, beneath the striving, beneath the pattern. And if you've noticed yourself clinging, looping, repeating, resisting, good, you are awake. And that is the beginning of change, not the end, because the real transformation begins not when the pattern ends, but when we bring full presence to it, with breath, with softness, with no judgment. So let your breath anchor you as these teachings continue in silence, and let the space between words be as nourishing as the words themselves, because the mind may crave answers, but the heart heals through presence, through attention, through stillness. And each time you return to this moment, you unravel a little more of what no longer needs to be held so tightly. And in that space, something new can emerge, not because you forced it, but because you stopped resisting it and let it bloom naturally in the vast field of your awareness. So, rest here, not in certainty, but in openness, not in perfection, but in peace. And let the wisdom of your own presence continue long after these words fade into silence. And as you continue resting here, breathing in the deep rhythm of the present moment, you may notice how the old patterns don't need to be forcefully broken, only gently seen, held in the light of awareness. For what we see clearly begins to lose its unconscious grip on our lives. Zen does not shout at the pattern, or rush to reprogram it. It bows to it, studies its edges, watches its rhythm, and in that loving attention, the old wiring begins to relax, like a tight fist slowly opening, no longer needing to grip for safety. Clinging to old patterns is never a flaw. It's a longing for certainty, for belonging, for protection from something that once hurt. And so we offer kindness even to our most stubborn habits, our most persistent fears, our most recurring stories, not because we want them to stay, but because we know fighting them keeps them alive. Instead, we invite them in. We make tea with our fear. We sit beside our anger, and we whisper, "I see you. I see why you are here, and you don't have to protect me anymore." And in that moment, we shift from reaction to relationship. We begin a new relationship with the self, one built on curiosity rather than control, on acceptance rather than analysis. Zen teaches that change happens not through will, but through willingness. The simple willingness to be fully present with what is, over and over again, until the old pattern no longer finds a place to anchor itself. And you may notice this already. The subtle softening, the slight spaciousness between thought and reaction, the breath arriving more gently, the heart feeling just a little less armored. This is the sign that the pattern is beginning to dissolve, not by force, but by light, the light of patient observation. And so as you sit here, listen here, rest here, allow yourself to be transformed, not by effort, but by presence, by the humble act of simply staying with yourself long enough to see that nothing needs to be added for you to be whole, and nothing needs to be removed for you to be free, only remembered, only reclaimed. For the patterns are not who you are. They are only how you've coped, survived, and navigated. And now, you are waking up, gently, moment by moment, to a deeper truth, a truth beyond habit, beyond fear, beyond the idea of self you once clung to. And in this awakening, you will find that you do not need to rush toward a better version of you. You only need to release the belief that you are not already complete. Zen reminds us that transformation is not about fixing, but about returning to the still, quiet awareness that has never been broken, never been lacking, never been separate. So let this be your practice, not to improve yourself, but to meet yourself here, fully, just as you are. And each time the old patterns arise, you return, not with resistance, but with recognition. Ah, here is the old dance. Here is the old voice. Here is the familiar shadow. And in naming it without judgment, you loosen its hold. And each breath becomes a step away from clinging and toward clarity. A step not toward becoming someone new, but toward remembering the deep spaciousness of who you already are. No longer afraid to see yourself clearly, no longer needing to armor or prove or defend, just resting in the sacred presence of the moment, where change is already happening, without strain, without strategy, just by allowing what is to be what it is. So let the quiet hold you now. Let the silence be your teacher. Let the breath be your guide, not toward escape, but toward arrival, because the path out of old patterns is not forward. It's inward, here, now, always. And if the same fears come again, let them and greet them, and know that you are not going backward. You are simply seeing more clearly. Each cycle is not a return to the past, but a deepening into the present, where real healing happens, slowly, gently, honestly, breath by breath, awareness by awareness, in the sacred space where Zen lives, not in answers, but in attention, not in control, but in surrender. So let go now, not of the pattern, but of the need to fix it, and watch how it softens when you do. And still, the breath flows, quiet and steady, reminding you that life continues without your effort, that the deepest truths reveal themselves not in doing, but in being, not in forcing, but in allowing. And this is the Zen way, not to chase liberation like a destination, but to uncover it in each breath, to find peace not after all patterns are resolved, but right here within them, recognizing that even your clinging has its own wisdom, its own tenderness, born from a younger part of you that once needed control or approval or safety just to survive. And now you can look at that part with the eyes of presence and say, "Thank you for protecting me, but I'm ready to live differently now." And this gentle inner dialogue begins to unwind the threads of the pattern, not through rejection, but through love, through integration, through stillness that listens instead of reacts. And slowly, like winter softening into spring, you begin to notice moments, small, delicate moments, where you choose differently, speak more kindly to yourself, pause before repeating the old rhythm, open instead of close, breathe instead of brace. And these are sacred thresholds. These are the silent victories Zen honors, not with applause, but with awareness. Because true change is not loud or dramatic. It is subtle, quiet, continuous, like water shaping stone. And this is why we sit, why we return to this moment again and again. Because every return is a turning point, a gentle rewiring of the nervous system, a deep remembering that you are not your story, not your reaction, not your pattern, but the spacious awareness that sees them all. And in this seeing, the pattern loses its fuel. The mind begins to loosen its grip. The heart opens a little wider, and a new rhythm begins to emerge. Not the rhythm of striving, but of resting in what is, the natural rhythm of being, of trusting that you don't need to become someone else to be worthy of peace. And in that trust, there is quiet freedom, the kind that doesn't shout or sparkle, but hums softly beneath your everyday life, showing up in how you speak to others, how you forgive yourself, how you hold space for your own becoming, without rushing it. This is the path of Zen, and it asks nothing of you but your presence, not perfection, not mastery, just the willingness to return, to breathe, to notice, to let go when it's time, and to stay with yourself when it's not. And so the journey continues, not forward, but deeper, not upward, but inward, as you learn to befriend each moment as it is, with no need to fix it, and no need to compare it to the past or to anyone else's story. And as you listen, let the rhythm of this stillness fill you. Let it wash over the old beliefs, the conditioned responses, the echoes of former selves, and let them fall away gently, naturally, as all things do when they are fully seen. There is no rush, no urgency here, only a quiet invitation to keep softening, to keep noticing, to keep showing up as you are, again and again. Because this is how old patterns are truly released, not in one grand gesture, but in 1,000 small moments of meeting what is, breathing through it, and staying present enough to choose a new way. So keep listening, keep breathing, keep allowing yourself to unfold at your own pace, knowing there is no wrong pace, no wrong path, only the truth of your own experience, honored fully, met fully, embraced fully. And in this embrace, everything begins to shift, not because you forced it to, but because you allowed it. And that allowing is the essence of Zen, to live without resistance, to meet what arises with compassion, and to remember always that even your most ingrained patterns are not you. They are guests passing through, and you are the space vast enough to welcome them all. If this message brought you calm, this space is always here for you. Subscribe, return, and walk this quiet path with us, one breath at a time. Until next time, remember, in this moment, you are free to choose presence over pattern.